recorded and how I couldn't send it to Garrett last week. Thank you.
Okay.
It's
Well,
probably,
I started
ahead.
the earlier, so.
Okay.
And right now, I'm going to go ahead and make you host.
How do you'll have to help me forward that if I'm the only one who can forward it.
I put it to my computer so I can do it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So if you'd send that to
Welcome to
Garrett.
Cafe Organic. How may I help you? Yeah, can I just get some coffee, please? What kind, sir? Latte?
Okay.
Okay.
Was that Carol? Was that your girlfriend?
Sure. Black, please. Sir, we call them African Americanos here.
How'd you guess?
Rob Dittmer's trying to get on.
Morning, Carol.
Morning. It's too early to tell.
Has it hit 90 yet in Florida, Gary?
Actually, a few weeks ago, we had a 90-degree day. And we're looking at probably next week will probably be upper 80s at least.
Starting to warm up.
We're not getting the cold fronts coming through anymore. We're not getting any more temperatures in the 40s or 30s or anymore like that. Every time it starts to get real cold, the front pushes right back up the peninsula.
Hmm.
So at this point, we're done with our cold weather for the year.
What's the cutoff? About south of the Panhandle?
Yeah. The storms will move down the peninsula and it'll rain, but then the warm weather pushes it right back up the coast.
Hmm.
For those of you,
Go ahead.
but go ahead, Gene, go ahead.
I said, I almost put my snowblower away, but I decided it's only March, so I just kind of left it parked and ready to roll.
Sounds like you're gonna need it this weekend.
Yep. 2 or 3 times. There's your picture.
There we
Nick.
go.
Have we run Arnie off? There's Steve.
Steve,
Come on in, Steve.
for those of you who just joined the call, Rob is not actually on the call. I just used his account to start it, and then I used another machine for myself. So
Oh, okay. Thank you. Mr. Paynes.
there's Arnie.
Ed, how's your pup doing?
Doing pretty good. Finally over the 2 emergency room visits. So
2. Okay.
he's doing good.
I've got a nephew who carries health insurance on his dog. Do you do that?
We did it on this one, except it didn't kick in till after they have like a waiting period when you first sign up. So it didn't kick in till after the emergency room visits,
Okay.
of course.
Arnie, good morning. Here's to him. Come on down.
You're muted, Arnie.
Yep. Ed, how's our church building?
Okay, there we go.
We're moving along. It should be done by the end of March.
Oh. Good.
If
How much
everything's
much
all in
electrical?
place and all the estimates get approved by the insurance company,
Yeah.
should be done by then.
How's the electrical, furnaces, et cetera?
Everything's still broke. But as soon as the insurance company approves all the estimates, then I can move forward.
Gonna have to replace furnaces?
No, just all the ducting that fell
Oh,
underneath. I think that estimate was $3,800. Drywall and painting was $6,800. Because they have to paint the whole room. They can't just,
yeah.
paint where it failed. The door opener stuff was, and the alarm was $3,200. They don't have to do the carpet. That's probably a good thing. They were able to clean it. And I still don't know what the alarm system. He's coming today to hopefully fix the ground fault problem.
Any chance the old roof got damaged in this?
Yeah, we were hoping one of those airplane parts would have fallen on it.
No, I don't think so.
That's what Pastor Kathy said. When that happened that day, she says, "Have you been over to church to see if it was damaged at all?" I said, "No, but if it was, I hope it hit the roof."
How big a deductible do we have on our insurance?
I think it's 5,000 for the roof.
How about for the stuff they're doing now?
Well, they told her 1,000.
Really?
I don't know why that would be different than the roof, but when Pastor Kathy first called, they said 1,000. But that'll be ended up about 2,000 probably, because they don't pay for the fix of the damaged part that caused the failure, like the pipe that broke. They don't pay to fix that. I've run into that before with insurance companies. They won't pay for the repair of the actual cause, but they pay for everything the damage it caused. And in the big scheme of things, that's probably $200, $300 to fix that versus thousands and thousands of dollars of the damage it caused. I never understood that. And then plus the butterfly valve that was damaged because of that metal pop out that got washed back in there and got jammed in the valve. They're not going to pay for that. So.
All right. Well, it's 7:30. How about Ed or Carol? We got any good ones? Probably a groaner or two.
Yeah, I've got a couple.
Hello, Paul. Can you hear us?
Hey, Bob.
These are says too good not to share. When one door closes and another door opens, you are probably in prison. To me, drink responsibly means don't spill it. Age 60 might be the new 40, but at 9 p.m., it's the new midnight. It's the start of a brand new day, and I'm off like a herd of turtles. The older I get, the earlier it gets late. When I say the other day, it could be referring to any time between yesterday and 15 years ago. I remember being able to get up without making sound effects. I had my patience tested. I'm negative. Remember, if you lose a sock in the dryer, it comes back as a Tupperware lid that doesn't fit any of your containers. If you're sitting in public and a stranger takes a seat next to you, just stare straight ahead and say, "Did you bring the money?" When you ask me what I'm doing today and I say nothing, it doesn't mean that I'm free. It means I'm doing nothing. I finally got 8 hours of sleep. It took me 3 days, but whatever. I run like the winded. I hate when a couple argues in public and I missed all the beginning and don't know whose side I'm on. When someone asks what I did over the weekend, I squint and ask, why? What did you hear? When you do squats, are your knees supposed to sound like a goat chewing on an aluminum can stuffed with celery? I don't mean to interrupt people. I just randomly remember things and I get really excited. When I ask for directions, please don't use the words like east. Don't bother walking a mile in my shoes. That would be boring. Spend 30. Sometimes someone unexpected comes into your life out of nowhere, makes your heart race and changes you forever. We call those people cops. And the last one, my luck is like a bald guy who just won a comb.
Thank you for all those. Carol, you got any toppers?
Just one. Seemed like Ole had a heated argument with the Mrs. Lindstrom. Finally, in the exasperation, Mrs. Lindstrom exploded. Ole, if you were my husband, I would give you poison. And not to be outdone, Ole retorted, if you were my wife, I'd take it.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Dale. Welcome. You're on mute. And you're up. Dale, good morning.
I can hear you now.
Yeah. Just in time.
Are you ready for me?
We're ready for you right now.
Oh, I had trouble getting on, so I apologize for being late. I wanted to share a poem. I saw this poem after thinking about some issues of ageism that have bothered me here recently, some incidents that I was part of. And I saw this poem and I just thought it might be something that we'd like to share. The poem is called For Seniors. Do you know what lies at the end of the road after all these years of bearing your load? Have you any idea what lies before when the days of your youth can hold no more? Have you found the rainbow with its pot of gold? Has your life been fulfilled as your story is told? Can you earnestly say that it's all been worthwhile as you journeyed through life each mile after mile? So many of us are inclined to say, I wish I had done it some other way. But we cannot retrace the steps of our years. We're left with the memories, the joys, and the tears. We're only assured of today and its hour. The past must be buried like an old faded flower. Does your age make you feel you're a burden to man? Remember, beloved, you're part of God's plan. Though your body be feeble, your hearing impaired, there's a good deal of work in this world to be shared. And although you're not able to physically strain, you are still able to share others' pain. You can encourage and you can advise your vast store of knowledge that now buried lies. The lessons you've learned in your travel on earth, to those who are younger, now share your worth. Let the beauty of age and the wisdom of time be a joy to your heart, and then share it with mine. A poem by Greta Swan, written in 1982. So let us pray. We thank you for the gift of wisdom and insight that our years have accumulated for each of us. Please soften the barriers between generations that so often leave seniors feeling undervalued and our youth lacking the needed guidance and direction. Dear Lord, help us open doors of understanding between generations and guide us in ways that result in renewed relationships that focus on the dignity of older adults and serves the needs of those who follow us. In thy name we pray.
Thank you, Dale.
Dean, before we get started, while everybody's here and they don't have to leave at the end, could I just ask something quick?
Go for it.
I'm part of the reopen task, reopen the church. And last night we had another meeting, and we're kind of curious. You're going to see a survey come out, but the question came up: when would everybody in this group feel comfortable coming back as a group gathering at the church? Would it be, after you have a vaccine? What do you think it would look like? We may not be able to sit side by side like we used to, jammed around those tables. We might have to be spread out more, but we're just kind of trying to get an idea of what that would look like, and how many would be willing to come back as a group, and how many would be still comfortable staying on a Zoom type call.
Before anything else, Ed, did you see the new CDC guidelines that came out for fully vaccinated people? Yesterday, the CDC released information that says if you're fully vaccinated, you're welcome to gather in small groups without masks.
I don't think we saw that specifically. I know they came out with they had some things on there that was pretty recent, but I don't think that was the case.
This was just yesterday.
Yeah, this just came out yesterday.
Did they say anything about, I know in the past you mentioned that even though you're vaccinated, you can still be a carrier. Did they say anything about that?
At this point, saying no, that you won't. And mine was always speculation that you could. So they're saying that the testing right now, if you're fully vaccinated, it's safe to gather in groups without masks.
Okay, so you're not contagious. You can't carry it if you're vaccinated.
No, I don't think that's exactly right. I think that they're saying they don't really know, and that's why they're recommending that people who are fully vaccinated, when they go out in public, continue to wear the mask. They think that the amount of virus that you accumulate after being fully immunized is probably very, very low. But I think they're probably using an abundance of caution, recommending that if you go out in public, even if you're fully vaccinated, you continue to wear the mask.
Tom, the guidance I was talking about was groups of people who are all fully vaccinated.
Right, the small group people that can get together,
Right.
yes. Yeah. But they didn't define what small group is.
Yeah, the other thing is, we just got our Johnson & Johnson on Saturday, but it still they say it takes 28 days to fully to take effect in your body. So
Really?
I think they're probably using the mask thing also to say, you can't have your vaccine one day and then turn around and say, oh, I'm vaccinated, I'm good. I think, you need to keep the mask on, in that grace time.
I've been following that stuff pretty close, and I haven't heard them say beyond 2 weeks for any of the 3 vaccines that are approved for emergency use. Did they tell you that when you got vaccinated?
Yep,
28 days?
it's right in the paperwork, because that's a 1 shot only.
Okay, so I guess maybe
So
Johnson & Johnson is different.
So it probably equals the others, because it's a 2 or 3 week process between shots.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Is there anybody in this group other than Gary who hasn't been vaccinated gotten their second vaccination at least 2 weeks ago?
So everybody's vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
My 2 weeks is up on Thursday, so.
Okay.
So and we're talking into April
Yeah.
and May. Nothing's going to happen at the church, and at least by groups. I doubt anything will happen until late April or beginning of May, where things are actually going to physically open to groups. They're going to do it in stages. So by then, everybody should be vaccinated. So, other than Gary, would everybody be willing to meet or not? I mean, it's a personal choice.
Well, I intend to follow the CDC guidelines. So as long as they suggest not gathering in non-small groups, I guess I would not.
And
But
that's the guidelines we're going to follow to reopen too.
okay.
Now, with the beauty of our chairs, we can put, a family of 4 over here and a family of 3 there, and spread, 50 people around that sanctuary.
Right.
I don't know what the number would be, but we're comfortable in coming in.
Well, I'm talking about this group specifically.
Yeah.
About this group meeting. Can I have a show of hands who would be comfortable coming back to church to meet with this group?
I would be, as long as we're not excluding Tom, but if Tom needed to set a ways away from the rest of us, would that work, Tom?
Yeah, and if they're going to follow the CDC guidelines, I'm comfortable following. We went out for dinner for the first time over a friend's house on Saturday night, and it felt like I was released from jail, to be honest with you. So sooner the better for me. But my doctor just really recommends that I be super cautious, because I'm really vulnerable.
Again, this isn't going to happen probably until late April or into May.
I think I would be comfortable.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Is it possible when we do come back that we could have some type of I know we're doing this with my Optimus Club, where we're meeting together as a group, socially distanced, but they're also they're having a Zoom link so that people that do not want to come to the meeting can still participate. I don't know if that's possible to do that technology-wise when we get started back or not, but that might be an option if it's possible.
It's possible. It's just
As
probably
long
not
as the-
everybody on the Zoom picture. The group might not be, other than maybe a big picture, but not everybody's face like it is now. That would be kind of difficult, unless everybody brought their laptop, and zoomed in, even though you're there physically. So, but we could talk, about that.
Well, before, didn't we have like 3 or 4 tables?
Yeah, but we were still jammed together.
Right, but it was still separated, not a great big group together.
Right.
But we could include Gary if we had what you just said, a Zoom link.
Exactly. Yep. Anything's possible with God, right?
With God and technology. So Gary's got to be a part of it.
Yep.
I agree.
You have to move back, Gary.
I appreciate the sentiments, guys, but I always knew that this was probably a short-term gig. But yeah, sure, if you do that, I'll participate.
We could all fly back down to Florida each Tuesday morning to be with Gary.
There you
Glad
Only
you're
in the
paying for it.
wintertime, though.
Yeah, I certainly would be happy to bring my laptop to the meeting if it meant that we wouldn't have to exclude any of these guys.
I would too.
Right. How big is your house, Gary? Can you hold us all for Tuesday night, Monday night into Tuesday?
My facility has a big, what's the word I'm looking for? We've got a big hall here I could put you all in.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Did that help? Good. Arnie, if you would.
Okay. We're on Mark 14. And beginning with verse 43, and it starts talking about Judas. And I found in Frederick Buechner's book, Peculiar Treasures, this short essay on Judas. And I know we think of Judas as, he's the traitor. He's the one who sold Jesus out, sold his friend out, and then he went out and hung himself. But let me read this and just reflect on this for a few minutes. This will take about 3-4 minutes to read. Nobody can be sure, of course, why Judas sold Jesus out, although according to John's gospel, he already had a reputation for dipping into the poor box from time to time, so that cash may have been part of it. If, like the other disciples, he was perennially worried about where he stood in the pecking order, he may also have been reacting to some imagined slight. Maybe he thought his job as treasurer of the group was beneath him. Another possibility is that he had gotten fed up with waiting for Jesus to take the world by storm and hoped that betraying him might force him to show his hand at last. Or maybe, because nothing human is ever uncomplicated, something of all of these was involved. Anyway, whatever his reasons were, the whole thing went sour for him soon enough. Slipping out of the Last Supper before the party was over, he led the way to the garden that he knew they were planning to adjourn to afterwards, and said to lay low till he gave the signal. It was dark by the time his former associate showed up, and maybe for fear that he might scare them off if he used any other method, the way he showed the soldiers which one was the one to jump was by kissing him. That was all he'd been paid to do. And as soon as he'd done it, there was no earthly reason why he couldn't have taken off his laundered cash and found a place to spend it. But when the time came, he wasn't in the mood. There are several versions of what he did instead, of which the most psychologically plausible seems to be that he gave the money back to the ones who'd given it to him and went out and hanged himself. This time, there doesn't seem to be any ambiguity about the motive. There is a tradition in the early church, however, that his suicide was based not on despair, but on hope. If God was just, then he knew there was no question where he would be heading as soon as he'd breathed his last. Furthermore, if God was also merciful, he knew there was no question either that in a last-ditch effort to save the souls of the damned, as God's son, Jesus would be down there too. Thus, the way Judas figured it, hell might be the last chance he'd have of making it to heaven. So to get there as soon as possible, he tied the rope around his neck and kicked away the stool. Who knows? In any case, it's a scene to conjure with. Once again, they met in the shadows, the two old friends, both of them a little worse for wear after all that had happened. Only this time, it was Jesus who was the one to give the kiss. And this time, it was not the kiss of death that was given. What do you hear?
Well, it kind of goes against some of my thoughts over the years about him being predestined to do it, that it was prophesied that Jesus would be betrayed or the Messiah would be betrayed. And so for a long time, I've been thinking, you know, he really didn't have much of a choice, but doesn't seem like that's, at least in that essay about it. Could I ask another question about that though? Is there any thoughts or study or those scholars' theory on why they needed someone to actually identify Jesus? My understanding is he was incredibly well known, probably as much as John the Baptist at that time. And I wondered, and I think it's the Jewish leadership that actually arrested him. It wasn't the Romans. So why did they need someone to identify him? I mean, he was, like I said, I think he was a well-known person.
Good question. I don't know if I have an answer. Perhaps it was just Judas's way of stepping up and earning his money. And yeah, it's a good question, Tom. Anyone have any thoughts?
I think your answer, Arnie, is probably as logical to me, at least, as any. He had agreed to it, and he followed through with it. From the standpoint of the plan was already there, and it's in the shadows. There's a lot of shadows, both literally and metaphorically in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Tom. It's like, even Jesus said, I preached in your temples. Why didn't you arrest me then? It's not like it wasn't hard to find. He was always out there preaching in public. So very, very good point.
Part of this happened early in the morning. By the time they had, finished the Last Supper, it's probably from where the Last Supper was to where the Garden of Gethsemane is projected to be, was probably about a 40-minute walk. And then if they were, the disciples fell asleep 3 times, they must have been out there for some time. These disciples were fishermen. They were used to being up all night. And so if they fell asleep in the garden, it suggests that they had been out there for, some time. And it was dark, and coming up through the coming up through the olive trees or wherever, maybe that's why it took Judas, someone who knew Jesus very closely to sort him out. But what strikes me in this little essay by Frederick Buechner is the very last line, that only this time it was Jesus was the one who gave the kiss, and this time it wasn't the kiss of death that was given. What does that suggest to us?
So that suggests to me that he forgave Judas.
That suggests deep forgiveness. That Jesus reaches out even to the one who did him the worst. Here Judas had been with him for, was one of the disciples for 3 years, and had betrayed him. There's some study about Judas. He's called Judas Iscariot. If Iscariot is a reference for the man from Kerioth, that means that Judas was probably a Judean, whereas the rest of the disciples were probably Galileans. So Judas may not have been exactly the same breed or caste that the others were. But we wonder, if Judas followed Jesus, did he gradually cool off? Was he disappointed because Jesus failed to strike decisively at his enemies? Was Judas a very strong person in the law and stumbled over Jesus's indifference to so many points? Or maybe he was just an avaricious man. But what strikes me about that essay is that the deep forgiveness that Jesus gives and offers, and no matter what I have done, no matter what the sin is, there is always Jesus' offer of forgiveness, and it's deep. Even though, if somebody offends me, I have trouble sometimes forgiving them. That sound familiar? It's not. There are people I would not go up and kiss because of what they've done to me. Okay, or the slight that I thought they have done to me, and here that Jesus, that's what forgiveness is, and that he, no matter what the offense, no matter what the sin, Jesus is ready to come to me, to touch me, to bless me, to forgive me. And that is and that is grace, and that is grace. And I think that that's one thing that we can hang on. Each of us can hang on to. We're not going to have a public confession here on this Zoom class about everybody tell me your worst sins. Okay, no, we won't do that publicly. You can mute yourself and do that. Okay, but no matter what it is, that's the message of Jesus, our Savior and Lord, is that he comes to wrap his arms around us, to hug us, to give that kiss of forgiveness instead of the kiss of we give the kiss of betrayal like Judas, but he comes to give the kiss of forgiveness, and that's the blessing and the grace.
So that, getting back to Tom's original question, maybe that's just why it's part of the scriptures and part of the story, that to give an example of how Jesus forgave whoever. So it just makes the story all that more, I don't know the word for it, but he always talked in parables and stories. So Judas is part of that story, just to show that how God forgives.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to what Tom was mentioned as well, the Judas, in truth, this was preset, obviously, in God's world. Judas didn't have a choice here. He was being used for the bigger story.
Gene, that's been my position, or my thought anyway. I don't know if I have a position on any of this stuff, because I know I'm just not smart enough to understand it. But the reason I love having these discussions about scripture is I'm kind of changing my opinion now. I think I was kind of in a rut of my thinking about the prophets. They prophesied what was going to happen, but not necessarily why it was going to happen. And somehow they just saw into the future and said, this is what's going to happen. And maybe Judas really wasn't predestined at all to do it. Just that the prophets, or whoever it was that predicted that he was going to do it, just were blessed with ability to see the future that way. I change my opinions on this stuff all the time based on these conversations.
Is somebody predestined to sin?
Well, I think that's the penalty of original sin, isn't it? We're all born in sin.
We're all born in sin, but I guess I stumble a little bit at the idea that Judas was the one chosen to betray Jesus. I think we all betray Jesus, and that Judas is just the one who exemplifies it. You know, if I had been chosen as lived back then and chosen as one of the 12, maybe it was me who would have done it. It could have been Peter or James or John or any of the others, but if I am predestined to do a specific sin, that's something I would have trouble with. I am a sinner, you know. That's something I confess every morning in my prayers and every Sunday in church. But is there a predestination to do a specific sin? I'd have to think about that one. Anything else on Judas?
It seems to me that Judas had free will. It was Judas' choice in verse 10. He went to the chief priest to betray Jesus. It was his will that he decided to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that was predestined in his will or not, he has free will. That's something that I've always tried to remember about that situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It probably proves that, Gary, that because he gave the silver back. You know, why wouldn't he have kept it? So
why did he give it back? Was it suddenly offensive? Go ahead.
He felt guilty.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest is that maybe he felt, you know, just a tornado of shame coming down on him, and he just flung it down and ran off, and did not.
I don't think he thought that they were going to kill Jesus. From what I gathered, you know, they just wanted to arrest him.
Yeah, and so there's a lesson. There's a lesson there for us is that, but the lesson for me in terms of Frederick Buechner's story is that no matter what the sin is, the forgiveness of Jesus is even greater. It doesn't mean I go out and rob a few banks and try to get away with it, but it means that no matter what I've done, the grace of God is greater, and His care for me extends deeply into my life, and that kind of thing. Okay. Anything else on Judas?
What was the title of that book, Arnie?
Frederick Buechner's Peculiar Treasures.
Thank you.
Yeah, Frederick Buechner's done a lot of writing and of Christian literature, and this book covers a whole bunch of about 125 different biblical characters that he reflects on, and okay. Where are we? Okay, let me just talk for couple of minutes. Okay, here. In chapter 14, verse 42, Judas appears. With him was a crowd armed with swords and clubs sent from the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders. Betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the one is the man. Arrest him and lead him away. Going at once to Jesus, he said, Rabbi, and kissed him. And the men seized Jesus and arrested him. And then 47, one of those standing near drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. And that was Peter. Number one, I'm wondering why Peter had a sword. And number two, if you're striking out with a sword and you cut off somebody's ear, how do you do that? Yeah, you come down, I would think you'd bang into his shoulder or something like that before the ear. But and then later on, the Gospel of John says the servant's ear was, man's name was Malchus. And what I'm wondering about that again is if, and that's in John 18, verse 10. It was Peter with the sword. The servant he struck was named Malchus. And I'm wondering if maybe Malchus later became a follower of Jesus in that sense that his name was remembered. And it's like later on we run into Simon of Cyrene, who was carried Jesus's cross for him. Later on in Paul's letters, he's listed. A couple of people are listed as his children. Some of these people were affected by the events that were going on. And then in verse 52, chapter 14, verse 51, we have a young man wearing nothing but a linen garment was following Jesus. When they seized him, he fled naked, leaving his garment behind. And when we started this study of the Gospel of Mark, we suggested that maybe this young man was John Mark himself, the author of the Gospel, as a way of kind of saying I was there, but kind of leaving his signature in this book in a subtle way, and sharing his presence there as well as later. Okay. And then just a couple other notes here, picking up kind of going back to the beginning. Probably should have done this the first session, but it's Mark's Messianic theme, which is picked up a couple of times in this chapter. If we go back, and I gave these verses in the notes that were sent out. If we go back to Exodus chapter 4, it's there where Moses is before Pharaoh, and he's talking to Pharaoh about letting the people go, that they may go, and then the Lord said to Moses, when you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders I have given you the power to do, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Then say to Pharaoh, this is what the Lord says, Israel is my firstborn son, and I have told you, let my son go so that he may worship me. And when you refuse to let him go, I will kill your firstborn son. So in the book of Exodus and in the Old Testament, Israel, the Jews were known as the sons of God, as the children of God. And then if we go to Hosea chapter 11, verse 1 and following, it says, when Israel was a child, I loved him. Out of Egypt, I called my son. And so Israel is known, and the Jewish people are known as the Son of God. But then when we get to the Gospel of Mark, Jesus is the one now who replaces the ancient Jewish people, and he becomes the Son of God. In Mark 1:1, Mark says the beginning of the gospel about Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And so Jesus then is the Son. And then in verse 11, at Jesus's baptism, the chapter 1, verse 11, Jesus is baptized. As Jesus was coming out of the water, he saw the heavens being torn apart and the Spirit descending on him like a dove, and a voice came down from heaven, "You are my Son. You are my Son, whom I love, and with you I am pleased." And then when we go to chapter 3 in Mark, verse 11, this is where the crowds are following Jesus, and there is a man comes up to him, when Jesus was there, well, in chapter 3, verse 7, Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed him. When they heard all that he was doing, many people came to him from Judea, Jerusalem, and the regions across the Jordan and around Tyre and Sidon. Because of the crowd, he told his disciples to have a small boat ready for him to keep the people from crowding him, for he had healed many, so that those who were with diseases were pushing forward to touch him. Whenever the evil spirits saw him, they fell down before him and cried out, "You are the Son of God." In other words, the sonship is shifting from the Jewish people to Jesus. And it's interesting that in the other references in Mark, the ones who recognize that Jesus is the Son of God are not the people, but are the demons. They're the ones who recognize that Jesus is there, is God's chosen, is God's. In chapter 5, Jesus is at the lake by the reason of the Pharisees, and this is where he casts out, the man is there who is chained hand and foot, but tears the chains off, and he cries out, he cuts himself, and then the voice, he shouts at the top, he's possessed by demons, he falls on his knees in front of Jesus, and he shouts at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" And he drives out the demons, and they get into the pigs and enter into the sea. And then at the transfiguration, the voice comes from heaven. Peter, James, and John are there, and the voice says, "This is my Son, the beloved." And so, and then in chapter 14, when we get to the just a little bit of advance from where we are, but in verse 61, Jesus is before the high priest. They charge him, they bring the charges against him, and again, they can't find what to do. Jesus doesn't answer. In verse 60, the high priest stood before them and asked Jesus, "Are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. And then the priest says in verse 61, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am." "And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One." And then the high priest tore his clothes. "What more do we need? Any witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" And then they condemn him at that point. And then it's interesting that it's this in chapter 15, verse 39, it is the centurion at the crucifixion who is the one who recognizes who Jesus is, that he is the Son of God. And so what the Messianic theme in the Gospel of Mark is that in the Old Testament, the Jewish people were God's chosen. Now Jesus becomes God's chosen one. And then as the rest of the New Testament spreads out, the people who follow Jesus become the chosen ones of God. And in Jesus, God is fully revealed as to who he is and what his mission is. And so Mark kind of carries that theme through, is that, and it's interesting to me that basically in Mark, the only ones who recognize really who Jesus are the demons. And, I think the lesson there that I hear is that the demons, wherever there is something good and true, that's where the demons show up to challenge it. And whenever we walk our lives out and try to be responsible and faithful, that's kind of where the demons show up to tempt us and to test us and to try us and to seek to get us to follow our own way instead of the way of the chosen one. Okay. That's the sermon for this morning. Any comments, questions? Okay.
Arnie, the run of, and I thank you for that whole kind of line of the chosen, the first, the sons. Is this just to continue? Is the importance of the firstborn, obviously, in the story of Moses and the Pharaoh? Is that a continuum of what is really the history of our world? Really, the firstborn seems to be identified in so many different cultures, religions. Are we doing this? Is this? And I'm not sure what I'm asking. It just struck me is that the importance of the firstborn, right down to the pharaohs, has been going on since the beginning. Cain and Abel.
In the news, we have the issue of the firstborn being the next in line to be King of England.
Yeah.
I agree 100% with Gene. This whole issue of the firstborn has carried throughout the centuries.
I have a little different question about this. Before we moved here to Colorado 3 years ago, we spent about 10 years in California, and we belonged to a church that was pretty much Baptist oriented. And it was very clear that most, if not all, of the people in our Bible class there believed that the Jewish people were still very much the chosen people. How would you respond to the question of whether after Jesus' death on the cross, all of us are pretty much equal?
I would say that, yes. I think God would, I think Jesus would want to choose each one of us. I don't think in his scheme of things, your nationality or ethnic origin promotes you above others. So certainly God did work through the Jewish people in the Old Testament times, but that was again moving forward toward the promise of God's Son coming, and it was now God, and now Jesus is the center, and not the ethnic origin or whatever.
For these people, the United States really, it's extremely important that the U.S. Protect Israel from any enemy at all. If there's any question about loyalty, it goes to Israel, and so that's part of the reason for my question.
Okay, well, that's another whole that's another whole issue. The Israel, the nation of Israel, is no different than any other nation. God does not have a special nation that he chooses above other nations. The whole history of the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel is for me, in my understanding, a political issue and not a religious issue. It has been turned into a religious issue by Zionism, but and that's another whole story of how the people who were living in the land were displaced after the Balfour Declaration and the whole conflict between the Israelis and Palestinians today is a result of that. But I don't think that God has a special land for a special people. We all are citizens of this planet, and regardless of our race or ethnic origin or our history, and we are called to love each other as brothers and sisters. The country of the idea of having a homeland for the Jewish people. The Jewish people have homelands wherever they live, in whatever country they live in, and it's not necessarily has to be on a certain plot of turf. I don't know if does that answer your question, Dave? I don't know.
Well, it does, but see, these people go back to the fact in their minds that when the Jewish people got the promised land, it was much bigger than Israel today. And so for them, Israel's entitled to a much larger plot of land, if you will, than what they actually occupy now.
But I would question the word entitlement because over the years, the land has been has had Arabs and Jews live within it, and actually the Arabs in the night up to the 1930s, early 1940s, the Arabs were living in had about 80% of the land, and the Jewish people they had emigrated, they had left, they'd gone to Europe, they'd gone to America, South America, and the Arabs were living there and owned about 80% of the land. The Jewish people owned about 20% or less, and they lived in peace. The Jewish people would come to the Arab fields and buy their olives, and the Arabs would trade in the Jewish stores, and they lived in peace. And then it was the Balfour movement in the 1930s and 1940s that what happened after the Holocaust and what happened in Germany, many of the Jews were feeling insecure, and they said, we need that homeland, we need to go back there. And then it became a matter not just of return, but also then of taking the land by force, and the whole occupation of Palestinian land by the Israelis is the story of theft, of injustice. It's basically a story of the Jews doing to the Arabs what the Nazis did to the Jews, or the Israelis doing to the Palestinians what the Nazis did to the Jews. And the whole question of the occupation has become a very sour issue that has been very destructive for the whole land. Israel has signed the Geneva Conventions and the International Accords of the United Nations, where they which commit a nation not to take land away from people whose land they occupy, but the Israelis have moved up to 750,000 of their own people into Palestinian land in the West Bank and in settlements, and they've Palestinians, when they have children, when they have babies, they will go out and plant a few olive trees for each new child they have. And the Israelis have, in terms of taking back the land, have destroyed over 1 million olive trees of the Palestinians as a way of trying to drive them out. So the turf over there is the land for all the people, and not just for one nation, not just for one people.
And it keeps embroiling the U.S. in the disagreement. Right.
And the we fund as an American nation, we fund Israel millions of dollars a day. And I apologize for this little speech. I'm very much involved with Bright Stars of Bethlehem, which is a group, which is the American support arm for the Lutheran College in Bethlehem, Palestine. Back in about 1991, Mitri Raheb, who was pastor at the Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem, began a new college, Dar al-Kalima. Dar al-Kalima is Arabic for the house of the word. And the college now has about 600 kids, both Christian and Christian and Muslim. And it is what happens is that many of the Palestinians want to leave because of what they have to live through. I was riding an Arab bus one day and sat down next to this young man, and we started talking. And he mentioned that he was, that all his family had left and had gone to Peru. And he said, well, I'm going to Peru too. And then he said, the only reason I'm staying here is because my grandfather is here and he refuses to go. But as soon as he dies, I'm out of here. And my other story is our daughter went to Valparaiso University in Indiana. And I have a sweatshirt that says Valparaiso University on it, but it says Valparaiso on it. And one day I was walking down the street in Bethlehem, and this man sees me coming toward him, and he's looking at me like, and I'm thinking, what did I do? And he comes up and he starts to put his arm around me, and he says, do you know the Shakara family in Valparaiso? And suddenly it dawned on me, he meant Valparaiso, Chile, because there's over 100,000 Palestinians who've emigrated out of the land and who live in Valparaiso, Chile, because they do not want to live under the occupation. And so that just kind of expresses some of the tension that is going on over there. And the idea there is the Palestinians are losing their land and losing their freedom has been certainly curtailed by the occupation and what is happening there. But the Lutheran College in Bethlehem is an effort to say to kids, to young people, we can give you skills that will enable you to stay here and contribute back to your community. And they have programs, for example, like in culinary arts. I mean, if Israel and Palestine are places where tourists come, you need restaurants, you need food shops, you need things like that. And so a program like culinary arts trains kids in those areas. There's a program in filmmaking. One of their kids won 3rd place at the Cannes Film Festival about 2 years ago. There are many different programs like that that give kids skills that they can use in staying in Palestine and contributing back to their society. And so I apologize for getting off the subject here, but I think that I think we in the press, we hear basically one side of the story. And, you know, we will hear a story if a Palestinian throws a rock at an Israeli soldier, we hear about that in the press. But what we don't hear about is the Israeli soldiers going into a village, a Palestinian village at 3 o'clock in the morning, breaking into a house, taking out the child, and then saying to the parents, unless you tell us everything that's going on in this village, you will not see your child again. And when I've been over there, I've met with, there are Israeli soldiers who've gotten out and belong to a group called Breaking the Silence. And they have been forced to do things like this, and they find that it just is unethical and it's against their values. And so they've gotten out of the Israeli army because of things like that. And anyway, this is off this. I don't know if this is on the subject or not on the subject.
Thank you. I think we've also hit our preferred time here.
Okay.
Great perspective. We always appreciate the perspective on what's going on. Can we, let's check in quickly. Leroy, how's your life?
Yeah, things are going good. There's no real change. It's Colorado, looking forward to this weekend, not. But doing good. Thank you very much.
Dave Spitzer?
Yeah, we're still doing well. Thank you.
Arnie?
Doing well. Nothing new.
All right. Vic, how about you?
We're doing well. In fact, I'm going to have to log off early here. I got something I got to go get done this morning. So it's good seeing all of you. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Blessings.
Paul, how are you? Give us a wave at least if you're doing okay.
Me?
Good.
So say hello to Pastor Ernie. I've never met him before. Even he's a member of the church and I'm a member, but even different services. So I'm looking forward to meeting.
I'm looking forward to meeting you too. Blessings.
Thanks, Paul.
I enjoyed it this morning. Or all this morning I'm coming to, except last week, the line was down.
Well, welcome back.
What?
Welcome back.
Yeah, yeah. I'm see you all. And I'm looking forward to get back to services to normal.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah. I mean, between I had both shots already.
Good,
Good for
good.
you.
Now, everybody in the home here had both shots.
So it's a lot more open, is it, Paul?
Yeah, they're very careful here, you know. You get out of your apartment, you gotta have the mask on. Till next Tuesday.
All right. Ed Quintrell.
Things are going well. Basically, I was lucky enough to get an appointment and a date for a total shoulder replacement. I've been in continual pain because of it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, good luck with that. Tom, how's everything with your life?
So I can't complain. I feel pretty good. I had a CAT scan yesterday to do the 90-day follow-up to the surgery to see how things are looking in my abdomen. So I'm a little nervous about that. So keep me in your prayers for the next. I should know the results tomorrow, but what they're looking for is to see if anything is growing back yet.
Prayers.
I feel okay.
Good.
Good.
Carol Sorensen.
I'm doing all right, hanging in there.
How about Nev and Phyllis?
We're doing fine, no problems here. Leonard Tepper, who lives here in our building, and he's going to join the church. And they informed me yesterday when I talked to him that his son, who had COVID and was in the hospital for about 6 weeks, he's now home and doing much better. He's getting better breathing than he had before. So things are looking up for him.
Oh, good. Maybe the guy's going to join the church. Maybe he'd like to join our group.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, he's a real talker.
Well, we'll put him next to Carol.
Okay.
Dale.
I'm doing good. Working on a Zoom project for Our Savior's Lutheran up in Greeley on a little Lenten project, and I ran into some technical problems. So I went to Gary and found out that not only is Gary the best looking guy in the group, but he's really smart too.
Oh.
Appreciate his help. Thank you.
Gary, do you have his address to send money? Gary, how's everything in Florida?
Everything's doing well here. Beautiful weather. As you probably heard, Florida is one of the few states that completely opened, and we're really moving along here pretty well. And the vaccinations are picking up. They're now starting to vaccinate teachers and other essential workers, even so far as saying that sanitation workers are on the list to get vaccinated now. So we're doing well.
Good,
And I put this out to anybody. If anybody has any Zoom questions, I know the system pretty well and I can help you. And it was a pleasure helping Dale. It wasn't really any trouble at all.
Appreciate it.
Good. Thanks again, Gary, for everything, including setting this up today. Ed, anything more? Everything's good. Rob? Bob Peters?
Oh, here we go. Yeah. No, everything is pretty good here. The wife's still bothered by her sciatica, smiling her leg a lot. She's talking about finally going and seeing the doctor, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, prayers are appreciated. Other than that, we're doing good.
Good. Steve?
Doing well. Took advantage of the good weather over the weekend. Had some of my Optimist Club members help us get 9 bicycles ready for a group that depends on bikes to get to work. So we'll deliver those on Wednesday. We have 11 more to get ready in a couple of weeks. And we're able to get out and ride with my Monday group. This was kind of the first time yesterday that we had at least 6 of us get together. We've all had our vaccinations and have met the 2-week window after the vaccination. So we're kind of hopefully getting back to somewhat of a normal routine.
Good. Grover, did I miss you?
Well, you hadn't gotten to me yet. I don't know that you missed me. Everything's going great. I had the great pleasure of getting out yesterday and driving up to Fort Collins. It was really nice to be on the highway and doing some driving again. Things are kind of getting back to a little bit closer to normal.
Good. Well, we're doing okay. Laurel and I took advantage of the weather yesterday and went up and socially distanced on the driving range at the Broadlands Golf Course. We had lots of company, but everybody was a good 10, 15 feet apart out of necessity. But it was. I think that covers everybody. I apologize if we didn't. Let's finish with the Lord's Prayer, and then let's see. Oh, next week, Nev, are you up? Yeah, Nev Kempke, devotions and opening prayer. Is he gone?
There is his muted. There
I'll
he
be ready.
You'll be ready. Okay. All right. Let's finish with the prayer and then thank you all. Thank you, Arnie. That was a lot to think about.
Good.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
Our Father,
Who art in
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. For thine is glory forever and ever. Amen. Thank you, guys. Have a good week.
Bye, guys. Thanks.